So this is about a quiet transformation. Today we had two very different songs. We had Sunshine in My Soul, and then we had Choose Something Like a Star. And transformation can be powerful, like a butterfly coming out of its chrysalis, or it can also be that quiet change over time, that inward journey as we think and move and we are called towards something different. Winds be still, storm clouds pass and silence come. Peace grace this time with harmony. The winds are not still right now outside, but trying to find that stillness can be a powerful tool. I'm going to find a place to put my hymnal. Thank you. Finding that place of stillness in the midst of chaos is one of the biggest tools that we can find as human beings. I know many of us have seen postings or have been reminded of the 4-year anniversary of the COVID lockdown. And we were one of the first congregations to move away from our building because we wanted to protect everyone. We had no idea what to do. The worship committees was like, well, we'll just make it work. We didn't have the cameras, we didn't have Zoom, we did have Facebook. And so the first Sunday that we were away, my kids helped me do the service from my living room and set up my phone, and we just streamed on Facebook. And so we slowly learned, and many people have experienced, those who worked on the front lines of hospitals, those who worked in grocery stores and gas stations, and all the people who were not able to stay at home, and just so much uncertainty. And in the midst of that, this community showed up for each other. We had park circles and sat distance with masks on, and we're like, hey. We wanted to hug each other, but we're like, hey, we're here. People dropped off food on doorsteps and toilet paper when people were out of toilet paper. We brought soup. We brought, people put teddy bears in their windows and drew, little children drew chalk sayings to each other. And it just makes me want to weep when I thought of all the love that happened in our little neighborhoods and our downtown and all over this world. I don't know if you remember the videos in Italy of people singing across to each other, like, you are not alone, you are not alone. And I think of times like these when our politics are just so scary because there's so much discord, so much discord and so much just and not a whole lot of love talk going on. And I like to be reminded that underneath all that there are people, and there are hearts, and there are compassion if we can be called to our better selves. And that is the inner transformation, is to remember even in the worst of times, there are kind people. Even in our big, dark night of the soul, there are people to call. We spend our whole lives changing and transforming into the person we want to become. Who you are at this age is different than who you were at 4. Sometimes, you give me that ice cream. I want that ice cream now. Or when you're 14, you're like, oh my gosh, Mom, whatever. I still want to do that to people, whatever. Or, whatever age you are, we still hold onto that piece of that impatient little 4-year-old or that sassy 14-year-old or whoever we are, but we keep transforming, we learn, and hopefully we keep peeling away the layers of who we are. You don't smell bad like an onion, I promise. And a quiet transformation can be internal, but it's also supported by a community. And, in this planet, we have a small little planet. It feels big sometimes, especially when you're in the big sky of the Dakotas, but we're on a pretty small little planet. And even when we think we're most alone, there is somebody, something holding us. And whether it's gravity, love, community. I wanted to share this story from a UU adult program. And the writer says, several years ago, I spent an evening discussing covenant groups with members of a New England church who were interested in starting a small group ministry program. Part of my ministry is dedicated to helping congregations start and sustain small group ministries of 6 to 12 people. And you'll see that in congregations when, like, we have chalice circles. Other people call them different things. Our book discussion group, our men's group, all sorts of things are small groups. And, but these groups have a common experience. It's the change of heart, of being loved. The usual opening ritual has some sort of reading, or every little group has their own little thing. I have 2 different chalice groups, and we always read from the front of our materials, and we read it very reverently. And people are like, "Yeah, I'm in it," and then we'll start sharing together. And what it is it's this sense of coming together. And over time, first you learn people's names, and then you learn that their aunt, just had a bypass, or then you learn that they're really good at art, and then you learn all these other things that you might have in common with them. And there's something about that gathering that becomes a sacred ritual. It's something that you can count on, like, okay, on the second Tuesday of every month, I'm gonna be able to be with people who understand me and who hold me. And at the end of the remarks that this guy talked about, he said, I asked the members of the audience if they might simply like to get together in small groups over a meal and talk about some of their needs that they might have. And one of the most respected members of the congregation slowly walked up to the front, looked out at the congregations, and said he was interested in joining a group. He had wanted to do something like this for years because he was lonely. He said, I do not have any friends, he confessed. And everybody went, what? And there was literally noise. How could he be lonely? He was a beloved member of that congregation, a pillar of the congregation. And when the group quieted down, the man said, and this is his experience, he says, every man in this group who is my age knows what I am talking about. Our social upbringing taught us to not talk about our feelings. We are not supposed to be emotionally vulnerable or close to anyone but our partners. And the guy who wrote this said, something happened to me as he spoke. I felt the man's vulnerability. I could feel his vulnerability because his heart spoke to me about the hidden language of my own heart, loneliness. My own social upbringing had taught me to not talk about my feelings to anyone. I had learned to be emotionally invulnerable and closed to everyone. But now, here in the midst of gathered community, someone so much like myself had stepped forward and said, I am lonely. He didn't step forward as an authority figure or someone who had an identity of any kind. He stepped forward because he had unmet needs. His story was my story. My story was his story. So all of the people in the room were present together with that change of heart. And so when I think about this, I think about that quiet transformation. When somebody says, I'm scared, I'm lonely, I'm afraid. And I think big events like the pandemic, big events like a health crisis, or big events that can be joyful like a new baby and scary like a new baby, can call us to come up here and we light our joys and concerns and open our hearts, and people are like, oh, like I was getting weepy during our joys and concerns today. And it calls us into the presence that we are not alone. And what does that have to do with inner transformation? Is that, that Simon & Garfunkel song, I am a rock, I am an island. Well, I call BS on that. We are not rocks or islands, except for sometimes. And then eventually the ice breaks, eventually something happens, our car breaks down, and then people hopefully show up. Or you know how to fix your car. I was in downtown Atlanta, and I was in a neighborhood that I did not know, and my car got a flat, and I was like, oh no. And I was kind of stuck and I was in my 20s, and I was stuck in the traffic, and there were these guys that came out of a building. It was almost like, the circus car where you have all these people who suddenly run out. There were 3 guys that ran out of this building, said, put your car in neutral, and they pushed my car to the side, and they helped me put a new tire on in 15 minutes. I have no idea who these people were, but they helped me. And I was so grateful. I'm like, I'm so sorry. They're like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're going to be okay. I'm like, thank you, I'm okay. And another thing like that happened too in Atlanta. I was in the 400 North, which is a lot of lanes. And right before the toll, my car died. And I heard beep, 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 beep. And this guy came up to my window, and again, I was in my 20s and not very confident about being in traffic like that. And I said, I'm so sorry, please don't yell at me. He said, I'm not gonna yell at you. I'm gonna help you move your car to the side. And so certainly there can be people who yell at us and don't necessarily help us, but it taught me that not to always expect the worst, not to always, that sometimes people show up on your doorstep when you least expect it. And when you think about transformation, I think some of us can get caught up in our to-do list, and we're like, this is where we're going. This is the to-do list, and we go that way. And then something knocks us off course, our best laid plans. And I don't know about you, but when I'm knocked off course, and then I'm kind of in this liminal place of not knowing, is when the big, powerful stuff can happen to me. I was looking through some journals trying to think about this topic, and I looked at an old journal that I wrote about Aaron, my youngest son, when he was in elementary school. And I wrote, I lose track of time when I untie the tether of my to-do list and find the sweet freedom of letting my worries lie by themselves and put down the burdens at the door of my sacred time. And when I was a mother of young kids, my sacred time was like locking the door in the shower or taking a nap in the car, or, grabbing what time you could. I cannot carry these things all of the time. And in my Sabbath time, I do not have to have expectations, illusions of perfection, and performance drops away against the expansiveness and space that Sabbath affords. My narrow vision expands, and I find my spirit much less burdened because I can see the wider world, not just one piece of it. And so when we ignore our quiet time, when we ignore our stillness and we get caught up in the 24-hour news or whatever it is, we get caught up in the tide. And when we have all these workaholics and stressed out people, I love what I do. So I'll look up and I'm like, wait a minute, it's 8 o'clock. What am I doing on email? Get off your email, Julie. Go look at your garden. Go lay down. And finding that rest, that Sabbath, that inner knowing lets us understand what we need. And then when we come to the joys and concerns, we're like, yeah, that's what I need. That's what I need. So I wanted to share also another story about a colleague who was changed by love. She said, when love awakened me, I was tending my first death as a chaplain intern. I was scared of death, scared that I would screw it up. The place I worked had a bedside ritual, which you anointed the body. A fellow intern was with me, and when we arrived to the deceased rooms, he asked her son if we could pray for her. She said yes. And so we kneeled beside her on the bed and prayed. My colleague prayed in Korean. He is Korean. And I don't know what he said, but somehow it moved me. We got up and he helped me get ready for the ritual anointing. The deceased had lived at a long-term care facility for more than 5 years. Many staff came to pay their respects, many others as well. The room was full. I stood at the head of the bed ready to begin. And I looked up and saw my colleague standing in the back near the door. His head was bowed and he was praying. And I realized that he was praying for her and me. And I suddenly felt filled with a presence of love. I was filled with all the love she had ever given or received, and all of the love I had ever given and received. And at that moment, I remembered that love is there for us, and I have never felt without it since. And that sort of transformation is not something you can always put a dot on, you know? It's that, like the first time you kiss someone, the first time you look up at a full moon and you're like, wow, I am a part of a beautiful and amazing universe. And the first time that you know that you are not alone. Story from another friend who also experienced love as a changing thing in her life. When we realized our son was neurodiverse and what it would mean for him in our lives going forward, being aware of the challenges with people who experience neurodiversity is one other thing, but being a parent when you're going to advocate for someone who has a learning experience, I've stumbled along the way, but I wouldn't change a thing. And so watching as we try and surround our people with love, as we try and stumble and make mistakes. The root of religion is in feelings, says Friedrich Schleiermacher. The feeling of being utterly dependent upon and a part of life itself. Being a part of life means that we can't wall ourselves off, that we share our feelings, that we share who we are, and that we give and receive. And so every Sunday when you say, from you to you I give, you want to say it for me? How does it go? Thank you. See, I made a mistake. So when we do that, we give and we receive. And it's this exchange of energy, this exchange of love. And it's kind of, some people are like, that's kind of weird, that's money. But what is our money but energy? What is our serving each other in the capacity of showing up but love and energy. And if we can think about our lives in the presence of change, and that we like to fix ourselves like in one place. Like, I am this age, but suddenly you're not. I'm 50. And for some people, that's like, oh, you're a youngin'. For me, that is significant change. And I remember when I turned 13, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. We are constantly changing. And so when I am 75, I'm going to look back at when I was 50 and go, oh, you were a youngin'. You didn't know anything. Or maybe I will. But we are constantly changing. And if we can claim that sense of community, if we can claim that connection to one another, I feel like we'll be okay, Sometimes it feels really scary when the news and everything else is so hard. But when we can claim each other and claim our community to hold us, then love is stronger than fear. Love is stronger than loneliness. And thank you for being the people you are. Amen.